The air on the planet was thick and humid, filled with the scent of strange, glowing plants that lit up the forest like a sea of tiny stars. Captain Ryan Carter adjusted the strap of his rifle as he led his small team through the dense undergrowth. Behind him, Lieutenant Lisa Monroe scanned their surroundings with sharp eyes, while Corporal Jake Harper and Private Emily Dawson followed closely, their boots crunching softly against the alien soil. "Anything yet?" Ryan asked, glancing back at Lisa. She shook her head, her expression tense. The mission was simple: scout for resources that could help humanity survive. But this planet felt wrong. Too quiet except for the faint hum of the glowing plants. Every step they took seemed to echo unnaturally, as if the forest itself was listening. Suddenly, the sensors on Lisa's wrist device beeped. "Movement ahead," she whispered, pointing toward a cluster of trees. The team froze, gripping their weapons tighter. Ryan signaled for them to spread out slightly, forming a loose line. They moved cautiously, their footsteps silent now, every sense alert. Through the trees, they saw him. A man. At least it looked like a man. He wore tattered clothes, caked with dirt and dried blood. His hair was matted, and his face was gaunt, but there was something unsettling about the way he stood. His lips curled into a grin that didn't belong in this place, or maybe anywhere. It wasn't friendly. It was empty, hollow, as if someone had carved it onto his face. "Hold your position," Ryan ordered, raising a hand. The man tilted his head slightly, still smiling, and began walking toward them. His steps were slow, deliberate, almost mocking. Ryan frowned. "Stop right there," he shouted, his voice firm. The man didn't stop. Instead, his grin widened, exposing crooked teeth. Ryan glanced at his team. They looked uneasy, unsure what to make of this stranger. "Fire a warning shot," he said finally. Jake nodded and aimed his rifle into the air. The sharp crack of the gunshot echoed through the forest, startling nearby birds into flight. For a moment, the man paused, tilting his head again as if curious. Then he laughed. It was a low, guttural laugh, one that sent chills down everyone's spines. And then he kept coming. "Open fire," Ryan barked, raising his own weapon. The team obeyed immediately, bullets tearing through the air and slamming into the man's chest and legs. He staggered backward but didn't fall. Instead, his laughter grew louder, more distorted, bouncing off the trees like some twisted echo. Blood soaked his shirt, but he acted as though he couldn't feel it. "What the hell is he?" Emily muttered, her voice trembling. No one answered. They just kept firing, desperation creeping into their movements. Still, the man advanced, step by agonizing step. His laughter drowned out the sound of gunfire, filling the forest with an unnatural noise that made their skin crawl. Ryan clenched his jaw, adrenaline coursing through him. This wasn't possible. Humans didn't just shrug off bullets like that. He yelled for the team to fall back, but before they could move, the man lunged forward with terrifying speed. His hand shot out, grabbing Jake by the arm. With a single, effortless motion, he flung Jake against a nearby tree. The impact knocked him unconscious, leaving him slumped on the ground. "Jake!" Lisa cried, rushing toward him. Ryan grabbed her shoulder, pulling her back. "We need to go. Now," he shouted. The man's laughter followed them as they turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush. Each breath burned in Ryan's lungs, but he forced himself to keep moving. Behind him, Emily stumbled but quickly regained her footing, her wide eyes fixed on the path ahead. They didn't stop until they reached a clearing far from where they'd first seen the man. Only then did Ryan allow himself to look back. The forest was silent again, save for the faint hum of the glowing plants. But none of them felt safe. That man, or whatever he was, had changed everything. The team huddled together in the clearing, their breathing heavy and uneven. Jake was still unconscious, his body propped against a tree trunk. Emily knelt beside him, pressing a cloth to the gash on his forehead. Blood seeped through the fabric, But she kept applying pressure, her hands shaking. Ryan paced back and forth, his rifle gripped tightly in one hand. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. What asterisk was asterisk that? Lisa asked finally, breaking the silence. Her voice was low, almost a whisper, as if she was afraid the forest might hear her. No one answered. They all had the same question, but none of them had an answer. Humans didn't laugh after being shot. Humans didn't keep coming when they should have been dead. Ryan stopped pacing and turned to face the group. "We need to get Jake back to base camp," he said firmly. "He needs medical attention, and we can't stay out here." He glanced toward the direction they'd come from, half expecting to see the man step out of the shadows at any moment. But the forest remained eerily quiet. Lisa nodded and helped Emily lift Jake onto his feet. They supported him between them, his weight leaning heavily on their shoulders. Ryan took point, scanning the trees for any sign of movement. The glowing plants cast strange shadows, making it hard to tell what was real and what wasn't. Every rustle of leaves made them flinch. Every distant sound sent their hearts racing. As they walked, Emily couldn't shake the image of the man's face from her mind. That grin, it hadn't been human. It was too wide, too unnatural. And his laughter. She shuddered, remembering how it had echoed through the forest, louder and louder until it drowned out everything else. "Do you think there are more of them?" she asked suddenly, her voice trembling. Ryan hesitated before answering. "I don't know," he admitted, "but we can't assume we're safe yet." He glanced over his shoulder at the others. "Stay alert. If you see anything, even if it's just a shadow, say something." They reached the edge of the forest after what felt like hours. Base camp was set up in a small clearing near the dropship, surrounded by makeshift barriers of logs and metal crates. It wasn't much, but it offered some protection. As they approached, Ryan signaled for Lisa and Emily to take Jake inside the medical tent while he checked the perimeter. Inside the tent, Emily laid Jake down on a cot and began cleaning his wound. Lisa rummaged through their supplies, looking for bandages and antiseptic. Neither of them spoke. The memory of the man's laughter still hung over them like a dark cloud. Outside, Ryan inspected the barriers, kicking stray branches out of the way. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Later that night, the team gathered around a small fire. Jake was awake now, though pale and groggy. He didn't remember much about the attack, only flashes of pain and the sound of laughter. Ryan filled him in on what had happened, keeping his tone calm but firm. "We'll figure this out," he said, "but we need to be careful." Lisa pulled out a tablet and began reviewing old mission reports. She scrolled through pages of text, searching for anything that might explain what they'd encountered. After a while, she found something. A series of accounts from other colonies describing similar incidents. People who couldn't be hurt, who laughed even as they were attacked. These stories had been dismissed as myths or exaggerations, but now Lisa wondered if they were true. "I think I found something," she said, holding up the tablet. The others leaned in to look. The report mentioned strange symbols carved into trees near where the attacks occurred. Symbols that matched descriptions of ancient Earth myths about immortals and gods. Ryan frowned. "If those symbols are here, maybe we can find them. Maybe they'll lead us to answers." He stood up, determination in his eyes. "Tomorrow, we go back. We find those symbols, and we find out what we're dealing with." No one argued. They knew they didn't have a choice. Whatever was out there, it wasn't going to leave them alone. The next morning, the team prepared to head back into the forest. Ryan checked their weapons one last time, making sure everyone had enough ammunition. Lisa carried a small camera and notebook, ready to document anything unusual they might find. Jake was still weak but insisted on coming along. "I'm not staying behind," he said firmly when Ryan suggested otherwise. Emily stayed close to him, her own rifle slung over her shoulder. As they entered the forest, the air felt heavier than before. The glowing plants seemed dimmer, their light flickering as if struggling to stay alive. The team moved cautiously, their footsteps soft against the damp ground. Ryan led the way, his eyes scanning the trees for any sign of danger or clues. It wasn't long before Lisa spotted something. She stopped abruptly, pointing at a tree trunk up ahead. Carved into the bark were strange symbols, jagged lines that spiraled into shapes resembling eyes. They looked old, weathered by time and the elements. "These are the ones from the report," she whispered, pulling out her camera to take pictures. Ryan stepped closer, running his fingers over the carvings. They were deep, as if made with great force. "Do you think these mean something?" Emily asked, glancing around nervously. The forest felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. "Maybe," Lisa replied. "If we can figure out what they represent, it might help us understand what we're dealing with." She scribbled notes in her notebook, sketching the symbols quickly. The team lingered for a moment longer before moving on, searching for more signs. They found several other trees marked with similar carvings, each one leading them deeper into the forest. Along the way, they noticed other strange things: abandoned shelters half buried in leaves, scraps of fabric caught on branches, and even bones scattered across the ground. It was clear that others had been here before them, but none of them had returned. "This place feels cursed," Jake muttered, gripping his rifle tighter. His voice was low, but the words hung in the air like a bad omen. No one disagreed. As they pressed forward, the sound of laughter reached their ears again. Faint at first, almost blending with the hum of the glowing plants, it grew louder until it filled the forest. The team froze, their hearts pounding. Ryan signaled for them to move slowly, quietly, toward the source of the noise. Through the trees, they saw a clearing. In the center stood the man from before, still grinning that unnatural grin. But this time, he wasn't alone. Around him were other figures, all of them human-like, but horribly deformed. Some had twisted limbs, bent at impossible angles. Others had patches of skin missing, revealing raw muscle beneath. Their faces were blank, save for empty, sunken eyes that stared without seeing. At the sight of them, Lisa gasped, clutching her notebook to her chest. Ryan raised his rifle, motioning for the others to do the same. The group of figures stood silently, watching them with eerie stillness. Then, as if on cue, they began to move, stepping forward in unison. "Fall back," Ryan shouted, backing away slowly. The team obeyed, retreating into the trees. Behind them, the figures followed, their movements slow but deliberate. The laughter echoed again, louder this time, filling the forest with its chilling sound. Ryan glanced at Lisa. "Did you get enough pictures?" he asked urgently. She nodded, though her hands trembled as she tucked the camera into her bag. "Good. We need to get out of here." They ran, crashing through the underbrush as fast as they could. The figures didn't chase them. Not yet, but their presence loomed over the forest like a shadow. When they finally reached base camp, they collapsed onto the ground, exhausted and shaken. "We need answers," Ryan said, breaking the silence. "Whatever those things are, they're connected to those symbols. If we can decode them, maybe we'll find a way to stop them." Lisa nodded, already flipping through her notes. The team gathered around her, their fear giving way to determination. They didn't know what they were facing, but one thing was certain: they couldn't give up. Not now. The team spent the rest of the day analyzing the symbols Lisa had photographed. She spread her notes across the table in the center of their camp, comparing them to images from old Earth mythology and alien artifacts stored in their database. The symbols looked like a mix of both, too complex to be random, yet unfamiliar enough to leave everyone uneasy. Ryan paced nearby, glancing toward the forest every few minutes. "We can't stay here forever," he said finally. "If those things come back, we're sitting ducks." Lisa nodded without looking up, her focus on the task at hand. Jake sat beside her, holding an ice pack to his head, while Emily cleaned and reloaded their weapons. "I think I found something," Lisa announced suddenly. She pointed to one of the sketches in her notebook. These symbols, they matched descriptions of ancient rituals. People used them to summon or control something, but it's not clear what. Control? Emily asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. You mean someone made those things? Lisa hesitated. Maybe. Or maybe they're tied to whatever created them. Either way, there has to be a source, a reason they exist. Ryan stopped pacing and leaned over the table. If we find that source, maybe we can shut it down. Whatever it is, it's giving them power. Without it, they might not be so tough. The team agreed to return to the forest at nightfall. They brought heavier weapons this time, along with smoke grenades and recording equipment. Ryan wanted as much evidence as possible if they were going to report this back to command. As they prepared, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the camp. By the time they reached the clearing, the glowing plants had dimmed even further, bathing the area in faint, eerie light. The man and the other figures weren't there, but the symbols on the trees seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive. Lisa began taking more pictures, her hands steady despite the tension in the air. Suddenly, the laughter started again. This time, it came from all directions, bouncing off the trees and filling the clearing. The team spun around, trying to locate its source. Then, one by one, the figures stepped out of the darkness. There were more of them now, their twisted forms moving in perfect unison. Stay together, Ryan shouted, raising his rifle. The team formed a tight circle, weapons aimed outward. The figures advanced slowly, their blank eyes fixed on the group. Lisa noticed something strange. The closer the figures got, the louder the laughter became. It wasn't just coming from them. It was everywhere, inside their heads, drowning out their thoughts. One of the figures lunged forward, reaching for Emily. She fired instinctively, the bullet hitting it square in the chest. Like before, it didn't stop. But then, something unexpected happened. When the figure touched her arm, it hesitated, its movements faltering. For a brief moment, its expression changed, not to pain, but confusion. Did you see that? Lisa whispered urgently. It reacted when it touched her. Ryan caught on quickly. They're vulnerable somehow. Maybe physical contact disrupts whatever controls them. Before anyone could respond, another figure grabbed Jake, pulling him away from the group. Emily swung her rifle around, firing wildly, but the figures kept coming. Ryan threw a smoke grenade, enveloping the clearing in thick gray clouds. Move, he yelled, grabbing Lisa's arm and pulling her toward the trees. The team stumbled through the smoke, coughing and disoriented. Behind them, the figures slowed, their laughter fading into silence. When they finally emerged into clearer air, Ryan turned to the others. We need to regroup, figure out how to use this against them. Jake nodded, clutching his injured arm. If we can get close enough, maybe we can break whatever's controlling them. Lisa clutched her camera tightly, her mind racing. There's something else, she said. Those symbols, they are connected to something underground. If we can find it, we might be able to stop them for good. Ryan looked at the team, their faces pale but determined. Then let's find it, he said firmly. But we do it smart. No more running blind. The forest loomed ahead, dark and silent once again. None of them knew what awaited them beneath the surface, but they all understood one thing. Failure wasn't an option. The team moved cautiously through the forest, following Lisa's lead as she studied her notes and the photos of the symbols. The air was colder now, and the glowing plants had almost completely faded, leaving them reliant on flashlights to navigate. Every step felt heavier, the weight of what they were about to face pressing down on them. This way, Lisa whispered, pointing toward a cluster of trees where the carvings seemed more frequent. As they approached, Ryan noticed something odd, a patch of ground that looked different from the rest. The dirt was loose, as if it had been disturbed recently. He signaled for the others to stop while he knelt down and brushed away some leaves. Beneath them was a metal hatch, partially hidden by roots and moss. "Looks like we found it," Ryan said, his voice low. He motioned for Jake and Emily to stand guard, while Lisa helped him pry the hatch open. It creaked loudly as they lifted it, revealing a dark staircase leading downward. The smell of damp earth and something metallic wafted up, making Emily wrinkle her nose. Ryan turned to the group. "We don't know what's down there, so stay sharp. Stick close together." He flicked on his flashlight and started down the stairs, the beam cutting through the darkness. The others followed, their footsteps echoing softly against the narrow walls. At the bottom, they entered a large chamber filled with strange machinery. In the center of the room stood a pulsating orb, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly light. Thin wires connected it to various devices scattered around the space, humming softly as if alive. The sound made their skin crawl. "This must be the source," Lisa murmured, pulling out her camera to document everything. She stepped closer to the orb, her eyes wide with fascination. "It's alien tech, but not like anything I've seen before." Before anyone could respond, the laughter began again, low at first, then growing louder. The team spun around, weapons raised, as the figures from the forest appeared at the edges of the chamber. Their movements were slower now, almost hesitant, as if they were struggling against something unseen. "They're tied to this thing," Ryan said, glancing between the orb and the figures. "If we destroy it, maybe we can stop them." "But how?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "We don't even know what it does." "We don't have time to figure it out," Ryan replied grimly. He pulled a small explosive charge from his pack and handed it to Lisa. "Set this on the orb. Get it ready to blow." Lisa nodded, her hands shaking as she attached the device to the base of the orb. The figures began advancing, closing in on the group. Ryan fired a warning shot, but the creatures kept coming, their blank faces twisted into expressions of pain, or maybe rage. "Get back," Ryan shouted, tossing a smoke grenade into the center of the room. Thick clouds filled the chamber, obscuring their vision. The team backed toward the staircase, firing blindly to keep the figures at bay. Behind them, Lisa activated the timer on the explosive. 30 seconds, she yelled over the chaos. The figures lunged forward, breaking through the smoke. One of them grabbed Jake, dragging him toward the orb. Ryan tackled it, knocking it off balance long enough for Emily to pull Jake free. "Go, go, go," Ryan barked, pushing everyone toward the stairs. They climbed as fast as they could, the hum of the orb growing louder behind them. Just as they reached the top, a deafening explosion rocked the chamber, sending shockwaves through the ground. The hatch collapsed, sealing the entrance shut. Breathing hard, the team stumbled away from the site, stopping only when they were far enough to feel safe. Ryan looked back at the smoking rubble, his expression unreadable. Whatever had been controlling those creatures was gone, but none of them felt truly victorious. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Lisa broke the silence. "Do you think that's the end of it?" Ryan shook his head. "I don't know, but we'll report everything to command. If there are more places like this, we need to be ready." As they walked back toward camp, the forest seemed quieter than before. Too quiet. None of them voiced it, but they all wondered, had they really stopped the threat, or just delayed it? The team returned to their base camp in silence, the weight of what they'd done, and what they'd seen, hanging heavily over them. The explosion had destroyed the orb and sealed the underground chamber, but none of them felt truly safe. Ryan kept glancing toward the forest, half expecting the figures to emerge again, unchanged and unstoppable. But the trees remained still, the only sound the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. Inside the medical tent, Jake sat on a cot, his arm bandaged but throbbing with pain. Emily handed him a cup of water, her hands trembling slightly as she did so. "Do you think it's over?" she asked quietly, voicing the question that lingered in everyone's minds. Ryan shook his head. "I don't know. We stopped whatever was controlling them, but we don't know how far this goes. There could be more places like that one. More orbs, more of those things. Lisa nodded, flipping through the photos and notes she'd taken earlier. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with exhaustion and fear. "This isn't just about us," she said finally. "If other colonies have encountered these symbols, or worse, if someone else made them, we need to warn Command. This isn't something we can handle alone." Ryan agreed. He pulled out a small communication device and began recording a detailed report. He described everything. The glowing plants, the strange symbols, the figures in the forest, and the alien orb they'd destroyed. As he spoke, his voice was steady, though his hands clenched tightly around the device. When he finished, he sent the message off, hoping it would reach Command before it was too late. That night, the team gathered around the fire, their faces illuminated by its flickering light. None of them wanted to sleep, not after what they'd been through. The laughter still echoed in their minds, haunting them even in the silence. Jake broke the quiet first. "What were they?" he asked, staring into the flames. "Were they human once?" Lisa hesitated before answering. Maybe, or maybe they were never human at all. The orb, it looked like it was controlling them, giving them strength. But I don't know where they came from or why they were here. Emily hugged her knees to her chest, shivering despite the warmth of the fire. It felt like they weren't alive. Not really. Like they were puppets. Something else was pulling the strings. Ryan nodded, his jaw tight. Whatever they weren't natural. And whoever made that orb, they're playing games we don't understand. He paused, looking at each of them in turn. We did what we had to do. That's all anyone can ask of us. The others fell silent, lost in their own thoughts. Lisa stared at the photos on her tablet, trying to make sense of the symbols. They were beautiful in a way, complex, intricate, but also terrifying. She couldn't shake the feeling that they meant something bigger, something beyond their understanding. As the hours passed, the forest stayed eerily quiet. No laughter, no movement. It was almost peaceful, but the absence of danger felt unnatural, like the calm before another storm. Ryan stayed awake long after the others had drifted off, keeping watch over the camp. Every sound made him tense, every shadow made him grip his rifle tighter. By morning, the team had decided to leave the planet as soon as possible. They packed up their supplies quickly, dismantling the tents and loading the dropship. None of them wanted to stay a moment longer than necessary. As the ship lifted off, Ryan stood by the viewport, watching the forest shrink below them. For now, they were safe. But as the planet disappeared into the distance, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they'd only scratched the surface of something far darker and far greater than they could imagine. The dropship hummed softly as it broke through the planet's atmosphere, leaving behind the dense forest and its secrets. Inside, the team sat in silence, their faces drawn with exhaustion and unease. Ryan stood by the viewport, staring out at the endless expanse of space. The planet grew smaller and smaller until it was just a speck against the black void. But even as they put distance between themselves and that eerie world, none of them felt truly free. Lisa sat at a small table, organizing her notes and photos into a folder. Her hands moved slowly, as if weighed down by the memories of what they'd seen. "We did everything we could," she said finally, breaking the quiet. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant, like she was trying to convince herself as much as the others. Jake nodded, though his face was pale. He still held his injured arm close to his chest, wincing whenever the ship hit a patch of turbulence. "Yeah, but do you think it's really over? What if there are more places like that? More orbs?" Emily glanced at him, her expression grim. "I don't know. But I don't think blowing up one orb is going to fix everything. Whatever made those things, it's out there somewhere." Ryan turned away from the viewport and walked over to the group. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp, focused. "You're right," he said. This isn't over, but we've done our part. We stopped what we found, and we reported it. Now it's up to Command to figure out the bigger picture. Lisa nodded, closing her folder. They'll send teams to investigate other colonies, look for similar symbols or technology. If anyone else has seen this kind of thing, they'll find out. She paused, glancing at the others. But I can't shake the feeling that we only saw a piece of something much larger, something ancient. The thought hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. None of them wanted to dwell on it, but they couldn't ignore it either. The laughter, the glowing plants, the symbols carved into the trees, all of it pointed to something beyond human understanding, something that had been waiting, hidden, for who knows how long. As the ship continued its journey, Emily leaned back in her seat, staring at the ceiling. "Do you think we'll ever go back?" she asked quietly. "To that planet, I mean." Ryan shook his head. "Not unless we have to." And even then, he trailed off, his voice trailing into silence. They all knew what he meant. Going back would mean facing whatever horrors still lurked in the shadows, and they weren't sure they were ready for that. By the time they reached the rendezvous point, where a larger transport ship awaited them, the team had fallen into an uneasy rhythm. They checked their equipment, reviewed their reports, and prepared to hand over everything they'd gathered. But their minds kept drifting back to the forest, to the figures with hollow eyes and twisted grins. When they boarded the transport ship, they were greeted by a senior officer who listened intently as Ryan delivered their report. The officer's expression grew darker with each detail, his brow furrowing in concern. "You did well," he said finally. "But this changes everything. We'll need to alert all colonies, start running scans for similar activity." As the transport ship carried them further away from the planet, Ryan stood by another viewport, gazing out at the stars. Lisa joined him after a while, holding her folder tightly. "Do you think we'll ever understand what we found?" she asked. Ryan sighed, his shoulders sagging slightly. "Maybe someday. But for now, all we can do is keep moving forward and hope we're ready for whatever comes next." The ship sailed onward, carrying its passengers towards safety. But as they left the mysterious planet behind, the memory of the Laughing Man lingered in their minds, a chilling reminder that some mysteries were better left unsolved. Or so they hoped.